Exports are not built overnight. It takes years of persistence, relationships, perspective to understand how to build a business that can lead into the export foray. Today, I am pleased to be joined by Dr. Ajay Sahai, Director General of Federation of Indian Export Organization, popularly known as FIEO, to hear from him what excites him about Indian exports in 2026. So, firstly, Dr. Sahai, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us. So, let's start by hearing you. When you think of Indian exports in 2026, what are you most optimistic about?
In fact, if you look into India's export performance in recent past, we are doing very well looking into the headwinds in the global economy, particularly on the global trade. We are seeing huge uncertainties, rising protectionism, volatility in currency, the slowing down demand in the advanced economy, and therefore, in that perspective, Indian exports have clocked 19% growth in November. This is much remarkable, particularly coming at a time when we are facing the tariff challenge in US, which was one of our major market. And we expect that probably this calendar year we end with an export of around $850 billion against around $820 billion, which is recorded in 2024. For 2026, we expect that number to go up to around $900 billion. But I think we need to look into what kind of challenges will be there. Some of these challenges may accelerate in 2026 because we have number of new non-tariff measures coming in. CBAM will be operational from 1st of January. We have seen that how the reciprocal tariff is started. The US has already moved to Mexico. Many countries may be also be encouraged to take that kind of steps. And I'm also sure that these kinds of challenges will spur, on the one hand, the increasing competition. We have seen that once China is out from the US market to a large extent, they have entrenched themselves into rest of the economy, making the competition tougher from the industry. But I think full credit goes to Indian exporter for showing the remarkable resilience and competitiveness, whereas we are seeing not only growth in the traditional sectors of export, but even in knowledge and technology driven sector of exports.
Right.
And I think that kind of strategy needs to be adopted by a country like India, where we are looking for export not just as a means to earning foreign exchange, but we want that to create jobs into the country. Therefore, our strategy has to be a nice mix of promoting the labor intensive sectors and also at the time facilitating the technology driven sector of exports.
Right. So, Dr. Sahai, speaking specifically of tariffs and US, since you talked about that, from an exporter's point of view, which are the other countries they can be looking at and what should their focus be in 2026?
I think Indian exporter need to diversify, and
Yes.
that is one positive fallout of the tariff has been that
Yes.
they are now looking for diversification seriously. I think when you are diversifying, you are going to replace a particular supplier into the country. So, what would be the your USP? From the government perspective, the USP comes in the form of free trade agreement, because if the government gets you a zero duty, you are either having the level playing field with the other competition, or you are one step up above the other competitor. From that perspective, I think Indian exporters should focus more on Europe. We will have the EU FTA also likely to be operational by January, February. We have one with UK,
Right.
which will be commissioning in probably in April, May. We have extended our FTA with GCC country also. With the UAE, we already have. We have extended to Oman. Probably with Qatar, we will have, and then with the entire GCC market. We are also looking into moving into the Eurasian Economic Region also, where the terms of reference has been finalized by the government. A lot of FTA with individual country, like in Latin American country, we are looking into Peru, we are looking into Chile, we are looking into expanding the Mercosur. So those will be definitely the country where Indian exporters should look into. But I think it will be a kind of product market matrix which needs to be adopted. You cannot push your all exports into one country,
Right.
and that kind of strategy will be definitely something which will paving the way in times to come.
Absolutely. So diversification is going to be really important, as you pointed out. And you mentioned EU, GCC, Latin American countries. Should we also expect policy shifts, more trade agreements, more initiatives by the governments to help exporters?
In fact, if you look into so far, we have signed 17 FTAs, and 3 FTA have been signed only in 2025. Many of them will be operational next year, many more will be signed. There is distinct shift in government strategy towards the FTA. In the past, we have gone for the FTA with the countries who are very strong in manufacturing, be it ASEAN, South Korea, Japan, and we landed in a situation where the imports growth outpaced the export growth, and there were opposition of that from the domestic industry. That's why now we are looking into economies who are complementary economies, and our major market for that. We have started with GOE, moved to Australia, then we have gone to European Free Trade Association, we have gone to UK, and probably that kind of strategy is helping the domestic manufacturing also, because the concession which we are giving is by and large on the raw material and intermediates. And if the raw material intermediates are coming into country at zero duty, they are making manufacturing competitive, they are making exports also competitive.
Right. And there's one more challenge, which we hear exporters talk about, we hear buyers also talk about, is this preconceived notion that we have, that our nation seems to carry from the past, of quality, which we have far left behind. But what can exporters or manufacturers do to give that promise of quality? Are there certain more licenses, more checks, more things that they can talk about to give the buyer the confidence that Indian quality is matchable to any other country?
If I think if you compare Indian product from pre-COVID era to the post-COVID era, there is distinct improvement in India's quality of product. I think industry has worked on the quality during the COVID time because demand was low and they could have concentrated it. Government also is looking into this very seriously. We have come with the quality control order on number of product. The idea is not to restrict the import. The idea is to basically to improve the product quality so that not only the export but the domestic consumers are also benefited. And I think we are moving into that direction. The BIS and other standard bodies are setting up the standards. They are applying the standard domestic manufacturing. They are also applying it on imports. And in the process, they are making it very clear that it is not just when you are looking into export, you have to be quality conscious. Even for the domestic competitiveness, you have to be quality conscious. We are going for the FTA, and many of the countries will be able to supply product at zero duty, and these are the quality products. Therefore, even in domestic market, if you have to survive, probably you have to focus on quality.
Absolutely. That's very well said. Speaking of categories, Dr. Sai, if I were to start a manufacturing business in 2026 and I want to get into exports, what would your advice to me be? What categories should I look at?
In fact, I think it's very difficult to answer. That depends on number of factor. I think one distinct advantage which India has, that probably we can always switch into exports and domestic business. If exports are not growing well, you can move to the domestic market, and when domestic market is not responding, you can move to exports. Probably that kind of leverage is not with many of the countries, including the Southeast Asian countries. I personally feel that probably in toy manufacturing, we have a huge potential. Not only that, we are not having toy manufacturing. Some of the global companies have come. I think we are developing now the ecosystem for toy manufacturing. Parts and components are getting manufactured into the country, and therefore that is one area. The second area will be, of course, on the food processing sector. We have huge potential. We are one of the largest grower of cereals and other products. But if you look into the value-added exports of food from India, this is almost negligible. And the processed food sector account for less than 30% of my total agri exports. Globally, it is 50% and above, and therefore, government has rolled out the product linked incentive scheme for the sector. Probably in that sector, if we can get some of the global companies who bring the technology also, apart from other ancillary like product improvement and product packaging, that can be an area where one has to look into. But probably you can move into fab manufacturing and many other areas which are now improving into the country.
Right. That's very well said and articulated, and I'm sure that's going to be very beneficial for our viewers. Speaking specifically about, how FIEO can help exporters, if you can throw some light on that more as knowledge for our listeners.
In fact, FIEO role has also changed over a period of time. Earlier, we were only working with the Ministry of Commerce, but we realized that all factors of production are in the state. And then over a period of time, we are working more with the state. In fact, FIEO has helped a lot of state to come with their own export strategy and subsequently with their own export policy. In fact, now we are working with the state to organize reverse bioseller meet in most of the states. The idea is that you have the SMEs who have the best of the product and services. Probably they are lacking financial and marketing wherewithal to go for conventional export. We are inviting reputed buyers from different parts of the globe and they are placing order on these SMEs into India. Over a period of time, with a granular approach, we have moved to the districts also. In fact, FIEO started with the district level export policy for first 25 districts, and then DGFT using the template has extended to around 550 districts. If we are addressing the supply side challenge at the district level,
Right.
probably we are paving the way for huge exports.
Right.
I personally feel that even with the target of $2 trillion which we are looking for may not be a challenging target. We may be able to achieve it. But for me, I will be very happy that in that achievement, the labor intensive sectors also significantly contribute. Because if you achieve the target by exporting mobile phone, vis-a-vis you achieve the target by exporting apparel, the impact on the employment sector will be totally different.
Right. That's very helpful to know. Coming back to one of the things we covered earlier is the perception that buyers should have of the suppliers or sellers from India. So if you had to just give a few pointers to exporters on how buyers assess Indian exporters and what these exporters should do to
In fact, we are in a digital age, and in digital age, buyer is having enough information, and therefore, when he is going to place an order on you, he will not just look into your strength; he will be comparing your product with number of suppliers. So in that situation, quality becomes the paramount.
Absolutely.
If you can work on the quality and buyer is sure on the quality, I'm very happy that we recently visited Russia for a hand tool exhibition, and Russian buyers were saying that Indian products are much improved product as compared to any of the other suppliers who were there, and that is quite reassuring. Secondly, probably when you are building the relationship, we have to look into long term relationship, and that's why I give full credit to Indian exporters who, despite having 50% tariff, are somehow absorbing and continuing with the bar, because we feel that this problem is only temporary in nature.
Yes.
Once the BTA is in place, they will be able to recover it, and that's why we have to look into cultivating the bar from a long term perspective. And there, after sales service also becomes very important.
Right.
Because if you're providing right kind of after sales services, buyer will definitely come back to you even if you have some issues with the product itself. And at the end of the day, you have to be competitive. When you are talking about the competitiveness, it's just not the product quality, it is the pricing also.
Right.
The good thing is that probably with the rupee depreciating significantly as compared to many of the currencies, to some extent the exports have become competitive. Though of course it varies from sector to sector. In some of the import intensity sectors, you have lesser competitive, but probably in the labor intensive sectors, exports have become little more competitive.
Right. So I think that's great advice. Quality, long term relationship, after service, all of these are paramount as far as any exports, manufacturing, any business is concerned. But in addition to that, do you also feel there is an importance for exporters to have a digital presence? Because when I speak to exporters, they invest heavily in participating in trade shows, and there's no substitute to that, going and being present, meeting potential buyers. But post that, what are the steps that exporters can take to be found digitally?
No, you are absolutely right, because even if you're participating in trade fair and exhibition, you are showcasing your product to a limited number of participants. But once you are available digitally, the entire globe becomes your market.
Right.
And from that perspective, I think most of the industry are focusing on that. They have moved to the social media also, because it's not just the product, probably the audience moves accordingly.
Right.
For example, if you're talking about the professional product, you maybe have to be on LinkedIn. If you're talking, addressing it to the youth, you have to move to other social media. So that kind of awareness, that kinds of consciousness is right now in the new generation, and probably that is driving the business also. We have huge potential in the e-commerce exports also, and I personally feel that this is ideally suited to a country like India, where we are looking into promoting artisans, craftsmen also. They can't go for the conventional export, but with the e-commerce retail market, probably they can look into that. The short point which I'm making is that while the physical fairs are extremely important, but when you are looking into the cost benefit, at times the digital presence gives you a little more advantage.
Absolutely. I think that was very helpful, Dr. Sai. Do you have like a closing message for exporters in 2026? The new year is starting. What is your advice going to
No,
be?
my advice to you is that we are looking into quite a challenging target for export is not just $2 trillion. We want that export should play a key role in transition of the country from a developing to a developed status, which we are aiming before we celebrate 100 years of independence. Probably that may not be possible with the existing exporter. We want new player to the come in field of exports. I will advise them this is an area which is extremely exciting, rewarding also, provided you are here for a long term perspective. So I will invite the newcomers who want to come into the field of exports to come to bring new vision for export, to bring new products and services to serve from India, and just not look into the product. Probably we are not utilizing the potential which we have in the services exports. In fact, from the next year onward, probably goods and services exports will be matching each other. Both may cross $400 billion this year only. Goods, in any case, should be around $450 billion. We have huge opportunity. That's why GCCs are making beeline in India, and 50% of the GCC businesses already come to India. So not only look into the goods export, but equally focus on the services exports also. I just only want to give the perspective why I'm saying that India's export is remarkable. Looking into the uncertainty, in fact, the IMF has come with the new index, which is known as World Policy Uncertainty Index. When it was rolled in 2015, the indices was at 20,000.
Right.
During the COVID, moved to 40,000. Today, it stands at 1,17,000, and it has doubled between January and October. So, if this kind of uncertainty is growing and still you are clocking a positive growth in exports, that is something which augur very well for India. And that thing I am drawing a lot of support from these kinds of numbers.